In grocery stores across America, you will find bakeries with cakes like these in them. And you may have thought to yourself, how do they decorate those? How do they write happy birthday on them? You may have thought to yourself, I could never write on a cake. Well, I'm here today to show you how. My name is Elena. I've been a cake decorator for 15 years. I also went to culinary school, but most of what I learned about writing on a cake, I learned right on the job, and with a little bit of tips and tricks and the right supplies, you could do it yourself. So the first thing I'm going to go over is the supplies that you need. The best thing to have is a pastry bag. This is a 16-inch pastry bag. They're just made out of plastic. They come on a roll. You can get them in 12 inches, 18, 24, it doesn't matter. You actually could also use a Ziploc bag if you're really pressed, but this makes the job a lot easier. You need a tip, and that also, I'm going to use it today. It makes the job a lot easier, but you could also use just the bag, cut a little tiny hole in the bottom, and use that as well. So I've got scissors so I can cut my pastry bag. They come to you just like this, all the way closed off. So you have to cut the end to whatever size you're going to use, whether to fit the tip you're going to use or the size that you actually want to ice onto the cake. So you need your frosting. Whatever you want to use, you can buy, most of the time you can buy it by the pound at your local grocery store. You could also buy the little tubs that are in the baking section. You could make it yourself. Whatever your favorite icing is, you just want to make sure it's nice and smooth so that it fits through the bag, and you want to make sure that it's not too hard so that you actually can squeeze your bag and squeeze the icing out of the bag. So those are the supplies you need. You could also use, some people close the tops of their bags with a twist tie or a rubber band. I do not use that in my technique, but that's something that you could do, and it's a good idea for storing the bag for later use to keep air out of it. So the next thing you need to do once you have all your supplies gathered, you need something to write on a cake perhaps, but you could also write on a plate, a piece of wax paper, anything, cookies, anything you want. But once you have that gathered, that's probably the most important thing, then you need to fill your icing bag. I like to do it just with my hand. I'll open the bag up over my hand like this. So I'm using my hand, my thumb, and my forefinger to hold the bag. And I'll kind of press it against the container that I'm scooping out of. And I'll scoop it in, and I'll squeeze it right in, and I'll scoop it right into the bag. And that's the way that I usually do that. Some people prefer to use an icing bag over a cup. They find it a little bit easier, so you would kind of just do the same thing. And you end up with your icing bag. And then, like as I said before, you could cut that little tip, and I can show that process as well. So now that you have your bag filled, a lot of people, what I see is they want to squeeze from the top of the bag like this, and then it's hard. It's really hard to get that icing out. Now your hand's shaking. You can't write nicely on it. It's no fun at all. You don't have to do that. You squeeze the bag right through the middle, and you give it a little twist, and now all you're working with is this little bit of icing, and that's a lot easier to squeeze, and it holds in your hand quite a bit more like a pen or a pencil. Maybe kind of a thick one, but still, and you can like even squeeze a little further down if you really like have a hard time squeezing, if you are not that strong in your forearms, you don't have a lot of practice, you can kind of adjust it to what you need. And this is actually a finer tip than I'm accustomed to using, so I've squeezed mine quite a bit down. So once you have your bag set up in your hand, I'm holding it not exactly like a pen, I'm holding it more, I'm squeezing it in my fist, I suppose. And when I come down to my cake, I'm going to try and center it, and that takes practice. That takes quite a bit of practice, but I will usually put my happy towards the top if I'm looking at a round cake like this with my birthday at the widest point. I have also known of people writing the birthday first and then centering the happy over that. That's all down to personal preference and practice. So I'm going to bring this icing right to this cake. You'll see that I'm holding my hand in my other hand for stabilization, And what I want you to notice is that I'm using my whole arm to decorate the cake. I'm not just using my hand, because as you can kind of see, I am shaking a little bit. And a lot of people say they could never do this because their arm shakes. And it is a little wobbly, but that also comes down to the fineness of the tip, because that tip is so small. And I'm writing in cursive because it gives you less times where you have to remove the icing from the cake, where you have to actually lift your bag away, which is less opportunities for places to mess up, because that is where you see kind of a lot of mistakes happen. So I usually I start the B just like kind of one big letter over from the H. I'll write out my birthday. And dot your I and cross your T. And some of those swirlies and things, that all comes down to personal preference. One thing I want to point out, and I'll show again on this plate, is when you finish a line, when you're just writing a line, you can't do that or you'll ruin your thing. You can't pull up on the icing bag, which is what I did. You'll have to come all the way down and then almost hover on it for a second. Push down into it a little bit or push back into it. So you're kind of securing it onto the surface that you're working with rather than just trying to let it go. Although that worked pretty good, but when you encounter different surfaces like icing, when you encounter moisture, when you encounter sprinkles, it makes it harder for things to stick. So you want to be really careful about putting your letters down. So as far as the writing itself, as far as the process itself, that's all there is to it. I can do it again really quickly with my icing bag and just cut just the little tiniest bit off to give yourself a little hole to work with. And a lot of this stuff does come to just getting used to what you're working with and coming down to practice. And that comes out just like that. Not bad at all. It's not a round shape is what you're getting. It's a different shape coming out of the bag because of the way the bag is positioned, but you still get something that's perfectly acceptable. It's going to look perfectly good on your birthday cake. So those are the basics. Those are the process of what you do, and the rest of it really comes down to practice, really comes down to getting a feel for the icing and how it works, and just doing it over and over like I did on this plate. You can do it on wax paper. You can always be practicing, or on little cookies, like doing it over and over again for gingerbread cookies for Christmas. That's going to be the same process, an icing bag just like this. You can get food colorings. I have here gel food colorings. I ordered these online, and I am showing you gel colors because they are a little thicker, so they give you a nice, really bright color into your icings. Sometimes you'll find if you're using buttercreams or whipped icings, they won't take the color so well. It won't mix in quite so evenly, or the color won't get so bright. Sometimes that's the dye, sometimes that's the nature of the icing itself, and you're not going to get a brighter color. But the way you learn all of that is just through working with this stuff, through trying over and over again and seeing what you can get. So hopefully with all of these things that I've shown you, you feel a little bit more confident. Maybe try writing on your next birthday cake. Maybe try decorating some cookies with your kids. And hopefully the next time you say to yourself, oh, I could never do that, you'll remember this and you'll try it.